Today we talk about how to select the right ERP.
This show is for everyone working at the coalface. Digital, business, marketing, social. This is At the Coalface with your host, Jason Greenwood.
Hello everybody, I'm Jason Greenwood. Welcome to episode 58 of At the Coalface. Feels like an age since I've been in front of you guys, and I feel so excited to be back in front of you again in the At the Coalface series. It's not that I haven't been creating content, I certainly have. It's mainly focusing more on Facebook Live and my new morning series, which is the Morning Hustle. And so that really is more about commentary on current events and current pop culture in the digital space, and my commentary and my take on that. So in that sense, it's much more topical, it's much more timely, but it's probably not quite as evergreen. And so At the Coalface really talks about what I believe to be timeless concepts around business, digital, and marketing that hopefully will have that evergreen component to them that can be referred back to over time and will continue to bring value to you for many years to come. So that's really the differential between At the Coalface and the Morning Hustle, and kind of how I've tried to shape them and position them for you guys so that you can get the most out of all of the different content that I produce. Doing a lot more on Instagram as well, and so really looking forward to getting back in front of you on a more regular basis for At the Coalface. We are continuing our digital transformation series. This is episode 58, and so we started off a series a few episodes ago. I think it was episode 55. We kicked off with the I don't know what Siri's doing here, but she's deciding that she wants to listen to me and have me say something. But anyways, so now we want to get into the next episode of our digital transformation series, where we want to talk about how to select the right ERP for your business. And what is ERP? It stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, also known as Enterprise Business Systems. So this is the back office system that is the financial and operational heart of your business. It's the system that really is the one system to rule them all. It should really be the single source of truth for most, if not all of your data. And as a result of that, it's an absolutely critical business decision to get right, and if you don't get it right, it's a very, very painful system to remove and replace. So obviously what we want to do is we want to give you as much information as possible to try to help you make a very informed decision around ERP, what makes a good ERP, and how you can leverage it in your business across every single operational and cross-functional area of the business. So when we talk about ERP, you're probably wondering, what is ERP? And if you aren't wondering what ERP is, then you probably have some experience with ERPs that may shape your opinions or your thoughts on the subject. You may either love it or hate the concept of an ERP. So ERP, as I said, stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and really it is the beating heart of your business. Typically it houses all your financial information, so if you think of it from that perspective, it's kind of like a Xero or a MYOB on steroids. So it's like a financial and accounting package, but it does so much more. So it typically tracks all of the inwards and outwards goods coming into your business. It tracks all of the pricing that you will put into those products or services that you're selling into the marketplace. It will oftentimes manage order management in terms of outbound. It will also manage so many other functional areas of your business. So it will oftentimes have components of a CRM or a customer relationship management component, which will also extend into both your customer-facing and your sales-facing parts of the business. So it will help you manage your internal pipelines of sales. If you've got an internal sales team, if you're a B2B business, primarily is where that component or that functionality comes to the fore. But even in a traditional retail environment, having a CRM at the beating heart of your business is very, very important. And so being able to know and have a single view of your customer across all of the transactions and all of the interactions with you becomes super important as you try to leverage big data and try to go market to them on a one-to-one basis based on their purchase history and their interaction history with your business, combined with their demographic data as well. So CRM and ERP are intrinsically linked, and ERP oftentimes becomes a hub for other systems to plug into and integrate to. So oftentimes oftentimes separate POS or point of sale systems, which we've talked about in other episodes of our digital transformation series, and other connected systems. So oftentimes your front end e-commerce website will plug into your ERP, your POS system will plug into your ERP, your marketplaces will plug into your ERP, and various other, maybe you have a dedicated warehouse management system, perhaps you've got a marketing automation solution that needs to plug into your ERP system, and maybe you even have an external CRM like Salesforce, for example, that might plug into your core ERP system if you're not using Financial Force as your core ERP system. So what are the big names in ERP that you probably will have heard of? You've probably heard of SAP out of Germany. You've probably, SAP is definitely one of the big players in the ERP space. You've probably heard of Oracle, also another massive player in the ERP space. You possibly have heard of NetSuite. You possibly have heard of Financial Force, which is part of Salesforce and is their kind of their ERP-ish or financials component. So you've probably heard of a lot of these. Almost every major enterprise software vendor has their own ERP platform. You may have heard of Microsoft's ERP known as Dynamics and the baby brother AX. And so you may really have heard these names in passing in regards to ERPs, but didn't even necessarily know what an ERP was, or when they use the term ERP, what that actually meant to your business or could potentially mean to your business. And for many small and medium-sized businesses, they may not actually be ready for or need an ERP. And so something like a Xero plugged into their e-commerce solution to take down the orders and then pump those orders perhaps out to a dedicated order management or warehouse management system in terms of a roadmap of technologies, that may make more sense than jumping straight into a very expensive and very complex ERP platform, because the reality is most ERP systems are reasonably complex, they're definitely not cheap, and they take a long time to implement as a rule. Now, what are the types of things that you want to look for in a good ERP? One, you're going to want to look for one that you can afford, because that typically is one of the major deciding factors of an ERP. You want to go through a pretty robust search and select process. So internally, you're going to want to start to document every single function that you do within the business, what systems you do that in, and to then start to measure up various different ERPs that you start to look at within the context of the business operations that you're trying to bring into the ERP platform. And then you can start to measure up whether that ERP will be able to do all or some of those functions, and then what other ancillary or separate systems that you will need to integrate with the ERP if it doesn't do it all for you. Now, I've made no bones about the fact that I'm a big fan of SaaS. I'm a big fan of the cloud, and so absolutely almost every single major ERP on the planet is a self-hosted ERP, meaning you host it yourself either on your own internal servers or in somebody else's data centers or cloud environment, whether it be public or private cloud environment. Now, I'm not a big fan of self-hosted software for all of the reasons I've talked about previously. And so really, when you start to get into the ERP space, it starts to, the options in the ERP space from a SaaS or cloud, true cloud, native cloud perspective become very limited and indeed. And in my personal experience, and I've consulted to a number of different companies now as they go through the search and select process for their ERP platform, and in my personal opinion, NetSuite really stands out as a best-of-breed SaaS native cloud product that is accessed through a web browser. It has one of the most extreme levels of flexibility, capability, and scalability that I've ever seen in an ERP, and certainly at one of the lowest or most acceptable and manageable price points for medium to large size enterprise businesses. I still think NetSuite probably is a little bit too expensive. You know, you're probably looking at a bare minimum, depending on the modules that you take on and depending on the number of users you have in your organization, you're still probably looking at around that 70 grand per year mark minimum, which for a lot of businesses is just simply too expensive for their core business system, especially at the small end of town. It's very manageable for medium-sized businesses if they start to look at all the systems that they run independently and all the costs associated with that. Then NetSuite oftentimes becomes a very attractive option, whilst also getting rid of all of the internal management required of their own infrastructure to host their ERP. Because obviously when you go with NetSuite, it's a cloud product, and so you don't have to worry about the scalability, you don't have to worry about security, you don't have to worry about upgrades, none of that stuff. You don't have to worry about upgrade hell or any of that, because it's hosted by the vendor on their own environment, and they manage all of the updates and upgrades, and it's pretty transparent, it's pretty seamless to you as the consumer that consumes that software through your web browser. So it's certainly, I'm a big advocate of NetSuite, love the product, think it's fantastic. It's not perfect. It's got its own challenges as a platform. However, one of the things that really sets it apart from a lot of other enterprise business systems, not just ERPs, but enterprise business systems full stop, and even e-commerce platforms full stop, that I really like about it, are that when you create new fields or you create new record types within the platform, the moment that you create them within the platform, they are immediately made available to a couple of core functions within the platform. They're immediately made available to the global search. So when you search within global search within NetSuite, it will search all fields and all records that are available to it, and every data set that you possibly have to try to find a matched result in global search. So that is an amazing functionality that literally within seconds of creating that new record or that new field against a record, you immediately have access to it through global search. You also have immediate availability of that data within the saved search and also all of your reporting and everything else. So it's made available internally to every single function within the platform immediately, and that's super, super helpful, and it allows you to be super flexible in the data that you put into NetSuite and how you leverage it and use it, even if it's integrated data coming from an external system. Now, the other thing that data is immediately available to is your API. There is no customization required. As soon as you create a new record or a new field, or even insert data into the database against an existing record or field, that data is immediately available to the API to be accessed, to be able to be pulled down in terms of being read via the API, to external systems or external middleware, but also to insert data into those fields via API. As soon as those fields are created, even if they're brand new fields that have never existed in NetSuite before, let's say you need a custom field for a custom record or custom data set or data type, then you can create that within the system. You can start loading data via API directly into that field, as long as you have the field name, which is given to you by NetSuite as soon as you create the custom field, and you start to insert that into the API requests. When you start to push data into the platform, you can immediately start populating that with data from external systems. So no extra developer time required, no customization required by your vendor, no customization required by your partner to start leveraging that new field immediately. So that is definitely something very attractive about cloud or SaaS software in general, but in particular with the NetSuite ERP system. So I know it sounds like maybe I'm a bit of a fanboy of NetSuite, and it's certainly, like I said, it's got its own challenges. They certainly pitch the platform as a one system to rule them all platform, especially since their acquisition by Oracle. They certainly are pushing that barrel pretty hard. But the reality is that a lot of the modules that they've acquired, so the components of the ERP that they've acquired from third-party vendors who built those technologies independent of NetSuite, and then NetSuite acquired them and tried to roll them in the core. A lot of those products just aren't really ready for prime time yet. They've got fundamental issues and challenges that NetSuite's going to have to work through before they can have a true, complete, end-to-end business system that's also a full omni-channel commerce stack. So they've got some work to go, but certainly I think in terms of overall business systems, ERP platforms, they're probably going to get there first in terms of a full stack, one stack to rule them all solution. They're probably going to get there first, if that even exists, if that nirvana really even exists or ever will exist. They're probably one of the companies that's going to get there first in terms of creating that solution for the broader marketplace at a price point that many businesses can actually afford. Because the reality is that at Oracle's price point, at SAP's price point, at IBM's price point, even at the Salesforce price point, a lot of those price points are just simply out of the reach of most businesses. Now, the other nice and attractive thing about the NetSuite ERP platform, not to wax too lyrical about it, but is that they have a smaller end of town product known as Jcurve. Now, that's exclusive to Jcurve out of Australia. Jcurve is a company based in Australia, and what they did is they did a deal with NetSuite where they could come out with a small business version of NetSuite. It doesn't have 100% of NetSuite's functionality. In other words, you don't have all of the different modules of NetSuite available to you. Notably, their e-commerce platform, SuiteCommerce Advanced, is not available to you when you run Jcurve. You can have, I think, a maximum of 10 users running Jcurve, and then you've got to graduate to full-blown NetSuite ERP. And the other thing is you don't have access to OneWorld, which is their global platform, so that if you have subsidiaries or business units operating in multiple countries, or you need to deal in multiple currencies, multiple businesses within the one platform, and under the one installation of NetSuite, you won't be able to do the OneWorld functions. You won't have access to the OneWorld module within Jcurve. So that's one downside to that, but the reality is most small businesses that would be using Jcurve don't need that additional functionality that you can't access until you move to full NetSuite anyway. So it allows you to graduate. You don't have to actually migrate. If you're on Jcurve and you want to migrate to full NetSuite, it's just a flick of a switch and signing up for licensing directly with NetSuite. So that makes migration really simple. You don't actually have to migrate anything. You just simply suddenly have access once you start paying that higher subscription and licensing fee and pay for your additional users. You have access to all of that full-blown NetSuite functionality with no data migration required, no reconfiguration of the platform required, because it is NetSuite. For all intents and purposes, it's just a limited subset of functionality and modules available underneath Jcurve. So anyways, I don't want to talk too much about that because there are other ERPs that may be appropriate for your business, but certainly some of those functionalities of NetSuite make it very, very attractive, especially to medium and large enterprises. But when you go through that vetting process, it certainly pays. And with all the businesses that I've consulted on around ERP, we've started to document all of their requirements they think that they need to run their business in a very efficient and flexible, scalable way. And then what we start doing is we start shortlisting some ERPs, doing the research around those ERPs to make sure that they can even meet those requirements in the first place. And then we start engaging with some partners of those vendors. Regardless of what ERP you go with, my recommendation is to definitely not engage directly with the vendor themselves of that core platform. Some ERPs have the ability for you to actually get your implementation done even by the core vendor. So for example, in the case of Oracle, have your Oracle implementation done by Oracle themselves. And NetSuite offers that dual channel strategy as well, where you can get your implementation done directly by NetSuite or done by a NetSuite partner. My recommendation always is to have your implementation of your ERP done, have it scoped, have it consulted on, and have it implemented by a partner of those platforms whose business it is to keep you happy as a customer as opposed to being a product company. The reality is that these ERP vendors, they're product companies, they are not professional or managed services businesses, and as a result of that, oftentimes when they try to do both, something suffers, and it's typically the professional services side of the business. And so implementing their own product, you'd think they'd be the best in the world at implementing their own product. Oftentimes they simply are not, and you really don't have anywhere else you can go when you've gone with the core vendor, apart from if you have a failed implementation, you've still got to go to a partner anyway. So ultimately my recommendation would be to try to find a local partner that implements that software on a local basis that you can literally have sitting down in the room with you, if at all possible, going through the scoping and implementation exercise together as partners. And then you're establishing a long-term relationship, so once you're live, they can continue to support your implementation and understand it from the ground up. So that would certainly be a recommendation as well, regardless of what ERP you ultimately go with. So hopefully you found that information interesting. ERP is a massive subject, it's a massively complex subject, and it's impossible for me to cover all of the facets of an ERP implementation and even the scoping phase in one video. It's simply impossible. I could do an entire series around ERP all on its own. But certainly ERP is the heartbeat of many medium and large size businesses. Once you outgrow a simple financials package like Xero and MyOb, the next step really is a full-blown, proper enterprise-class ERP. So hopefully you found this information useful. If you've got any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you've had experience implementing ERP systems and you have some gotchas that you want to make the watchers and listeners aware of, then please go ahead and put that in the comments. I'd love to have some dialogue with you guys and look forward to talking to you again soon. Cheers.